Hello everyone, I'm Danielle Nicole DeVoss and welcome to AL 860, Visual Rhetoric, Document Design, Theory and Practice. The purpose of this video is to welcome you to class, talk a bit about the goals of the class, situate you as to how you might be in the class, introduce you to class bases and resources, and to launch the first week of class activities. As you might imagine, there are dozens, if not hundreds of different ways we could approach visual rhetoric. We could study the ways in which people mark and make meaning, looking at things like Western cultural practices of grave marking is identity and memory, for instance. We could study perception through Gestalt principles, for instance, focusing on the notion of unified whole and principles of similarity, continuity, closure, proximity, invariance, and more. We could focus on a technical communication lens, attending to tables and charts and data representation. This class has a specific kind of focus. In some ways, we're going to cast a pretty broad net. We're going to read across rhetorical theory and composition studies. We're also going to dabble in computers and writing scholarship and in technical communication. And we're going to explore some information visualization and graphic design theory. Importantly, we're going to work across analysis and production. We're not just going to look and critique. We're going to create. We're not just going to make. We're going to analyze and question. And these two acts, analysis and production, inform one another. And we're constantly going to be working across that bandwidth of analysis and production. In this class, we're going to jump head first into a conversation that's been happening for a while now in rhetoric and composition, and certainly a conversation that's been happening for centuries in terms of humankind. What happens when visual and verbal information rubs up against one another? What does multimedia mean? What does multimodality mean? Is there really such a thing as a monomodal text? How do digital spaces and digital affordances change how we compose? I'm not going to read the course goals to you. They're in the syllabus. You can find them there. But I'm going to summarize. If we stop thinking about writing as merely putting alphabetic text in black ink on white paper in MLA or Microsoft Word prescribed formats, and that act in and of itself is often difficult enough. If we start thinking about letter forms themselves as designs that might be integrated in print and digital spaces in all sorts of different forms and formats, richly embedded within and around different graphical and other features, writing changes shape. And we may very well stop thinking about writing and more start thinking about composing. In this class, we're going to read about the work that helps situate visual rhetoric. Then we're going to read about and discuss some of the theory of visual rhetoric and document design. We're going to slide over to investigating pedagogical principles and practices. And then we're going to mash all of this together and spend some time playing, practicing, and exploring, experimenting with different design choices and affordances. I have a couple of suggestions that I'll reiterate during our time together. The first is pretty mundane. Feel free to roll your eyes at me. Time management is crucial to surviving and thriving in an online class. In any class. In grad school. In your career. In life. Anyway, I'd suggest you do what you do to succeed in a typical grad seminar. Set aside a couple of chunks of time each week for class. You may not be walking over to Olds Hall to sit in a room together, but identifying class time is important. Set aside time to work on class readings and activities. Set aside time to go to class. The second suggestion I have is more philosophical, and I hope you take it to heart. I'd like all of you to approach this class as both students and teachers. And by students, I mean students, learners. And put yourself, if and when you can, in your student shoes. You're all likely going to encounter some new terrain in this class, much like the students who take the classes that you teach. I think it's important for us as teachers to remember what it's like to be a student, to encounter and wrestle with new material, In every class I teach, no matter how many times I've taught it, I always do every assignment along with the students. By teacher, I'd like for you to approach this class as someone who might teach a class like this or include some of these approaches or materials in another class you teach. I want you to consider everything from this class open source and yours for the taking. And I'm going to make everything from this class as accessible as possible. Take the handouts, take the assignments, take the videos, take the slideshows, remediate them, remix them, reimagine them, recreate them, reuse them. So when you're working through the questions and the prompts and the assignments, approach them both as a grad student and a researcher and a learner, and also approach them thinking, how might I use this with my students in my classroom? As for the class materials, I'm going to try to make everything as accessible as possible and in different ways. You'll notice in this folder there's a link to this video, but then there's also the PowerPoint that I used to create this video, and then the individual pieces of that PowerPoint, and then also the transcript for this video. And for each of the video prompts, projects, whatever like this, I'm going to try to make those pieces accessible. So you can decide what your entry point is. Do you want to like quickly flip through the video and then really read the transcripts? Do you want to ignore the transcripts and watch the video slowly and carefully? It's entirely up to you. And if you have any interesting, different, or innovative ways to suggest in terms of how the class materials are presented, let me know. I'm always eager to try new approaches. As for class spaces, there are 3 key spaces we're going to use. The first is Angel. It's a password-protected, locked-down, private space. All of the readings for class are available on Angel in PDF. And if you're thinking, why isn't she having us spend $400 on books? Hang in there. When we meet in residence, I'm going to bring piles and piles and piles of books to class to share. Then you can pick and choose and decide which books you want to invest in and purchase. For now, we're reading PDFs. Also available on Angel will be links to the activities and the videos like this one. The blog is the second class space. The second class space is our class website where our schedule is posted and there's a link to some other materials, and importantly, our third class space, the blog. The blog is a public space where we're all authors and administrators and we'll be having discussions about the readings and sharing work during the online portion of class. And of course, you guys are welcome to link outward from the blog to Tumblr, Flickr, Vimeo, YouTube, Facebook, any of those other places on the interwebs where you live. Each online week you have a set of readings to do. I don't care when you do those readings and when you participate in our discussion and activities, as long as you do so sometime during that online week. While we're meeting for class online, we'll mainly be doing more theoretical, philosophical, and research-related readings. When we meet for class in residence, we'll be engaging in readings that are more design and practice-oriented. Each week online, we'll do a couple of activities that'll get us talking and engaging with the readings. This week's first activity is to set up a WordPress account if you don't already have one, and email me your WordPress user ID. Not your password, I don't want that, just the ID. Then what I'll do is set you up as an administrator on our AL860 WordPress blog, and you can write your first post, which should be an introduction. Your second activity for our first online week will be to respond to a prompt about visual culture that I'll post. Your third activity is to craft and offer an illuminated definition of visual rhetoric. I'll be posting videos and materials that will offer some more specific description and details for these activities as we move forward. Welcome to class.